It's hard to believe that directly behind me were some 14 million tires stacked in 25-foot high piles. All that remains now is a few piles comprised of approximately 100,000 tires and a lot of burned out debris left as a result of the fire. The cleanup will take several months, and the site will be continually monitored by the Ministry of the Environment during the next year. The actual location of the fire occurred in the city of Nanticoke, but because of the close proximity of the fire to the town of Hagersville and the fact that the Hagersville station received the initial fire call, the fire has become known as the Hagersville Tire Fire. The fire began on Monday, February the 12th, 1990, and was reported to the Hagersville Fire Station at 0108 hours by Officer Hallman of the Ontario Provincial Police. Bill Jones of the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office comments on this very critical time.
Our initial strategy, while the tactics changed somewhat, the strategy remained from the beginning to the end of the fire. Pull it apart and extinguish it.
All the runoff was to be utilized through the use of portable pumps, pumping it back to the fire site. That afternoon, a foam application was tried and proved rather ineffective. A suggestion was then made by Chief Dupuis of the Ontario Fire Marshal Fire Advisory Services that the Ministry of the Natural Resources aircraft might be beneficial in combating the fire. By the end of the first day, 2 injuries had occurred. One firefighter suffered a broken leg as a result of a burst hose line, and a second firefighter was bitten by a raccoon he attempted to rescue from the site. Obviously, the decisions that were made during the first day would be critical in eventually extinguishing the blaze. At approximately 1830 hours, Mr. Norman Sinibaldi, the acting mayor for the city of Nanticoke, declared a municipal emergency and a voluntary evacuation was established in a 4-kilometer square zone.
It's anticipated that it's probable that the plume may touch ground in a few spots in this particular radius around the present fire site. So checking with the Ministry of Environment, anticipating the winds to pick up around 2 o'clock in the morning, it was felt prudent to evacuate that immediate area.
The Ministry of Environment let this place exist because this man was appealing it. And there was a fire on that site previously by a different owner.
I don't know whether to go and take clothes. I can't take my vehicle, and no one knows? Like, how long is this going to take?
I want him to be really careful. That what I would prefer him to do is to go about 10 kilometers downwind.
We've gotten some information from from those fires that were in Wisconsin and in Virginia. They had faxed over the chemicals that were involved in that fire, and our people are trying to trace, compare the readings that they're getting on their TAGA.
At approximately 1500 hours, the first 12 aerial applications by the water bombers commenced. The water bombers would drop their load of approximately 5,400 liters or 1,200 gallons, and then return to Lake Erie to fill up again. The total turnaround time for each flight was 12 minutes. By this time, environmental concerns were beginning to develop as byproducts from the fire in the form of toxic oils began to run off from the burning tires. Ministry of Environment personnel were brought in to monitor the situation. Dr. Dennis Gore recalls the initial steps taken by the Ministry of Environment and discusses some of the problems they faced at that time. We had a lot of things that you would see in normal combustion, such as dioxins and furans and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Long, frightening sounding names, but they're the kind of things that you would see in a normal fire. There were additional things in there. While you would see benzene, toluene, xylene in a normal fire, but I think it was probably at higher levels here because of the very oily nature of the tires. Besides the benzene, toluene, xylene, we also saw a lot of zinc because zinc oxide is a component of tires. We find NDMA, the chemical that a lot of people are worried about, but only at trace quantities. And we find phenols, and there were a number of other things at a more of a trace level.
Meanwhile, the oil runoff continued. Some 4,000 gallons had already been removed, but 10,000 gallons still remained. This also slowed things down as the Ministry of Environment tried to get better control of the oil and water runoff. Dr. Dennis Corr explains further.
What we did was we had pits and ditches dug around the site to collect the contaminated water, to collect the oil that was being burnt off and draining down underneath the fire. And our hydrogeologist, Bill Blackport, for instance, was, you know, just incredibly good. I mean, he just made some really quick on-the-spot decisions about which way the groundwater was flowing, where would be the best place to dig holding ponds to get the oil out from directly underneath the surface, and it really turned out well. The other thing that we did do was we had a wastewater treatment plant brought in so we could treat that contaminated water and clean it up before we released it to the creek.
By now, a number of distributors of fire extinguishing products had already arrived, and each distributor was given the opportunity to present and outline their products. While most of the products were quite legitimate, a few suggestions that were made were quite out of the ordinary. For example, one person recommended detonating a bomb to extinguish the fire. One man said his wife would sew enough fire blankets together to smother the fire. Another person suggested pouring baking soda on the entire fire, which I'm sure would have pleased the manufacturer of that product. Another serious problem was changing weather, especially the wind, forcing the firefighters to move themselves and all the equipment to a different location.
By first light, it's already snowing heavily. The plume of the burning rubber swirls, forcing crews to move their equipment.
It doesn't look like it's going so well. It's uncomfortable. I mean, chopping through this sludge and muck and crap, oh, it's terrible.
The ministry's fire boss is Fred Bruin.
The people outside of a 5-mile radius really understand the severity of the problem, but I don't think they really understand how these toxins can get into the groundwater and just poison things.